The chill of the evening air seeped through the cracks in the windows, setting an eerie atmosphere as my date and I settled into a cozy living room. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an ambience that seemed ideal for a quiet night in. Little did we know, the decision to experiment with a Ouija board would set the stage for the night. Curiosity mingled with skepticism as we unfolded the Ouija board, its ancient letters and symbols illuminated by the dim glow of the candles. I had always considered such tools as mere games, but the energy in the room shifted the moment our fingertips touched the planchette. It moved hesitant at first, spelling out harmless words. As we exchanged nervous laughter, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the candles, plunging us into complete darkness. The room felt different, heavy with an unspoken presence. Ignoring the unease, we relit the candles and resumed our session. This time, the planchette moved more purposefully, spelling out words that sent shivers down our spines. "Watch," it spelled, and a sense of fear settled over us. My date exchanged a nervous glance with me, but we pressed on, dismissing the escalating tension as mere coincidence. As we delved deeper into the session, the planchette seemed to take on a life of its own. It moved rapidly across the board, spelling out names and dates that held no significance to us. The room's temperature dropped, and an oppressive weight settled on our chests. My date's once curious eyes now reflected fear, mirroring the growing dread within me. In a chilling moment, the planchette spelled out a name from my date's family history, a long-forgotten relative who had met a tragic end. We exchanged stunned glances, realizing that the Ouija board had tapped into a realm beyond our comprehension. The atmosphere crackled with an unsettling energy as we continued to communicate with an unseen force. The messages became darker, foretelling events that seemed impossible to predict. As the planchette spelled out details of our lives, secrets we hadn't shared and fears we hadn't voiced, an overwhelming realization set in. This wasn't a mere game. Something, or someone, was reaching out to us from the shadows. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, extinguishing the candles once again. Panic surged as the room plunged into darkness. In the blackness, we heard faint whispers, unintelligible yet undeniably sinister. Frantically, we fumbled for our phones to illuminate the room. The planchette remained stationary, but an ominous presence lingered, sending a chill down our spines. As we debated whether to end the session, a guttural sound echoed through the room, a sound not produced by either of us. A feeling of being watched intensified, and our nerves reached a breaking point. Trembling, we decided to close the session and bid farewell to the otherworldly entity that had invaded our lives. But as we uttered our goodbye, the planchette resisted, moving against our will. It spelled out a single, bone-chilling word: "Stay." Fear gripped us, realizing that the connection we had unwittingly established refused to be severed. The room seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and shadows twisted in unnatural ways. In a desperate attempt to break free from the paranormal grip, we forcefully removed our hands from the planchette. The room fell silent, but an oppressive tension lingered. We sat in the dimness, surrounded by the remnants of a night that had taken a terrifying turn. As we attempted to regain our composure, a sudden knock echoed through the stillness. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the rhythmic pounding on the door. Dread settled in as we exchanged terrified glances. No words were spoken, but the unspoken question hung in the air. Had we invited something malevolent into our lives? Summoning the courage to investigate, we approached the door cautiously. With each step, the knocking intensified, growing louder and more insistent. The air felt charged with an otherworldly energy, and the shadows in the hallway seemed to writhe with unseen entities. With trembling hands, we opened the door to an empty hallway. No one stood outside, and the silence that followed was deafening. The oppressive atmosphere persisted, and a feeling of being watched clung to us like a haunting specter. We retreated back into the living room, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. Throughout the night, strange occurrences continued, objects moving on their own, whispers in the air, and an unshakable feeling that we were not alone. Sleep eluded us as the darkness outside pressed against the windows, and the room seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. As the first light of dawn broke, we surveyed the aftermath of our ill-fated experiment. The Ouija board, once a seemingly innocent game, now stood as a portal to the unknown. The room bore the scars of a night spent in the company of forces beyond our understanding. Our first date had transformed into a harrowing journey through the supernatural. The echoes of that night lingered, a chilling reminder that some doors should never be opened, and some games should never be played. The paranormal encounter would forever be etched into our memories, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones, ensuring that others would think twice before delving into the mysteries that lie beyond the veil of the seen and the unseen. The flickering neon sign of the rundown diner cast an eerie glow on our faces as we finished our meal. Rachel, my date, had suggested a spontaneous adventure to explore an abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. The idea sent a shiver down my spine, but curiosity got the better of me. Little did I know that our decision would plunge us into the depths of a chilling nightmare. The night air was cool as we approached the looming silhouette of the asylum, its skeletal frame outlined against the full moon. The rusted gates creaked open with a haunting moan as if reluctant to release their secrets. Rachel's excited grin betrayed a hint of uneasy as we stepped into the asylum's entrance. The moon cast eerie shadows through broken windows, creating a patchwork of light and darkness that danced on the peeling wallpaper. The air inside was thick with the musty scent of decay, a testament to the years of abandonment this place had endured. As we ventured further, our footsteps echoed through the desolate hallways, a haunting symphony from the decaying walls. Rachel's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating glimpses of forgotten history, discarded hospital beds, rusted gurneys, and tattered patient records scattered like morbid confetti. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath our cautious steps. We shared nervous laughter, attempting to mask the unease building within us. As we explored deeper, the asylum seemed to come alive with whispers that slithered through the air. It was as though the walls themselves held the tortured memories of the souls who once sought solace within these confines. I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching our every move, and a chill settled deep in my bones. In a forgotten corner, we stumbled upon a room that seemed frozen in time. Dust-covered cribs lined the walls, remnants of a time when the mentally ill were subjected to unimaginable treatments. The air grew colder, and our breath formed visible clouds in the darkness. Rachel's gaze lingered on an old photograph hanging crookedly on the wall, a group of somber-faced nurses in outdated uniforms, their eyes seemingly following us as we moved. The unsettling quiet was shattered by an otherworldly groan that echoed through the asylum. Rachel and I exchanged terrified glances. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. We strained our ears, but the only sound was the distant howling of the wind. With a nervous chuckle, we dismissed it as the building settling, a feeble attempt to convince ourselves that the paranormal tales surrounding the asylum were nothing more than myths. As we reached the asylum's heart, the maze of hallways where patients once roamed in confusion, the darkness seemed to press in on us, and the air grew thick with a palpable tension. A sudden gust of wind extinguished Rachel's flashlight, plunging us into a darkness so absolute it felt suffocating. Panic set in as we fumbled in the dark, desperately trying to reignite the flashlight. Just as the blackness threatened to consume us, a dim glow emanated from the end of the hallway. The feeble light revealed a flickering candle placed on an old wooden table. We approached cautiously, our senses on high alert. On the table lay an antique Ouija board, its wooden surface weathered with age. The planchette sat in the center, seemingly beckoning us to partake in an otherworldly conversation. Rachel hesitated, her gaze fixed on the board. "Should we?" she asked, uncertainty etched across her face. Against my better judgment, I nodded, driven by a morbid curiosity. As our fingers touched the planchette, an unnatural stillness settled over the asylum. The air grew charged with an energy that sent shivers down our spines. The planchette began to move, spelling out words that sent a chill through our very souls. "Help us," it whispered, the words etched onto our minds like a spectral imprint. The temperature plummeted, and a chorus of distant whispers surrounded us. The flickering candle cast grotesque shadows on the walls, distorting the asylum's haunting history into nightmarish phantoms. We tried to pull away, but an unseen force held us captive, as though the spirits of the past sought solace through our mortal connection. Suddenly, the room came alive with ghostly apparitions, shadowy figures that swirled around us. Their eyes bore into ours, filled with a silent plea. The Ouija board spelled out a name, Emily. A surge of sorrow and despair washed over us, leaving us paralyzed in the presence of a tragedy that transcended time. As quickly as it began, the paranormal encounter ceased. The planchette stilled, and the spirits retreated into the shadows. The candle's glow flickered before extinguishing, leaving us in profound darkness. We stumbled out of the asylum, our hearts pounding in our chests, the weight of the supernatural encounter etched into our memories. The night air, once cool and inviting, now felt oppressive as we emerged into the moonlit clearing. The asylum loomed behind us, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of the past. Rachel and I exchanged a glance, our unspoken understanding confirming that we had ventured into a realm where reality and the paranormal converged. As we made our way back through the rusted gates, the asylum's silhouette gradually faded into the night. Our footsteps echoed the silence that now enveloped us, each stride carrying the weight of an otherworldly experience that defied explanation. The abandoned asylum, once a mere backdrop to urban legends, had become a haunting chapter in our shared history, a tale of exploration that transcended the boundaries between the living and the dead. The cool night air whispered through the dense foliage as my date, Alex, and I set out on a moonlit hike through the secluded woods. The rustling leaves beneath our feet created a serene symphony, and the distant calls of creatures added an eerie harmony to the atmosphere. The trail ahead seemed inviting, bathed in the silvery glow of the full moon. We shared easy banter and laughter, the connection between us growing stronger with each step. The canopy overhead created a natural tunnel, casting an ethereal glow that intensified the shadows beneath the towering trees. Little did we know that the tranquility of the forest held secrets darker than our wildest imaginations. As we ventured deeper into the woods, the atmosphere took an unexpected turn. The usual nocturnal sounds ceased, leaving an oppressive silence. The air became thick with an unspoken tension, and an unsettling chill crawled up my spine. I glanced at Alex, who wore a forced smile that barely concealed the unease in their eyes. "Feel that?" Alex asked, their voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, sensing a subtle shift in the surroundings. The moonlight, once a comforting guide, now cast elongated shadows that danced menacingly on the path ahead. The woods, once a haven, now felt like a labyrinth of secrets. Suddenly, strange noises echoed through the stillness. Unidentifiable rustlings and whispers surrounded us, making the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. Alex's grip on my hand tightened, mirroring the growing tension within me. The path ahead seemed to elongate, stretching into an infinite darkness. A soft breeze carried with it a haunting melody, as if the trees themselves were whispering ancient tales of sorrow. I halted, my senses heightened. The moon, once a beacon of clarity, now cast distorted shadows that seemed to take on a life of their own. Shapes moved at the periphery of our vision, flickering like elusive specters. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Alex nodded, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Shadows materialized into ghostly figures that hovered just beyond the edge of our perception. I could feel their gaze upon us, cold and penetrating. "We need to go back," Alex urged, their voice trembling. But when we turned to retrace our steps, the trail behind us seemed to vanish into an impenetrable darkness. Panic set in as the once familiar surroundings morphed into an otherworldly nightmare. The trees, once benevolent guardians, now stood like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "We're lost," I muttered, the words hanging heavily in the air. As if in response, the ghostly figures drew closer, their outlines becoming more defined. They emanated a sorrowful energy that seemed to seep into our very souls. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of the surreal nightmare unfolding around us. "We have to keep moving," Alex insisted, their voice a desperate plea. We pressed on, the path ahead narrowing with each step. The ghostly figures seemed to multiply, their forms intertwining shadows. The air grew colder, and a bone-chilling fog crept along the forest floor, obscuring our vision. A distant, mournful wail echoed through the woods, sending shivers down my spine. The sound seemed to reverberate through the very fabric of the forest, a lament from another era. I exchanged a horrified glance with Alex, our silent communication conveying a shared sense of dread. The path twisted and turned, leading us deeper into the heart of the haunted woods. Time lost its meaning as we navigated the labyrinthine trails, pursued by the ghostly apparitions. The moon, now obscured by ominous clouds, cast intermittent shadows that danced eerily across the forest floor. We need to find a way out, Alex said, their voice tinged with desperation. But escape proved elusive. The spectral figures closed in, their silent wails growing louder. I could feel their presence enveloping us, a suffocating embrace from the other side. The very essence of the forest seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, an ancient force that defied explanation. Just when it felt like the nightmare would consume us, we stumbled upon the trailhead. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, bathing the exit in a silvery glow. We sprinted toward the edge of the woods, our footsteps echoing like a desperate plea for escape. As we burst into the clearing, the silence of the forest gave way to the distant sounds of civilization. The ghostly figures, confined to the depths of the haunted woods, retreated into the shadows. The air, once thick with an unearthly chill, warmed to a more familiar temperature. Gasping for breath, we emerged from the woods, our faces pale and etched with the remnants of fear. The moonlit hike, intended as a romantic adventure, had become a harrowing journey into the supernatural. The haunted woods, now relegated to the recesses of our memories, served as a chilling reminder that some places are best left undisturbed, their secrets hidden in the shadows of the past. The quaint cafe exudes warmth, a perfect setting for my first date with Chris. As we exchanged laughter and stories over steaming cups of coffee, the ambience seemed idyllic. Soft jazz music played in the background, and the aroma of freshly ground beans wafted through the air. But little did we know, the tranquility would soon be shattered by a cryptic message. Mid-conversation, my date's phone vibrated on the table, drawing our attention away from the light-hearted banter. With a furrowed brow, Chris picked up the phone and scanned the incoming message. Their expression changed, a subtle shift from curiosity to apprehension. Sensing something was amiss, I leaned in, inquiring about the mysterious text that had cast a shadow over our otherwise delightful evening. The screen displayed a photo, and my eyes widened as I recognized us, frozen in a candid moment. The picture was taken from a distance, capturing the cozy ambience of the cafe, the warm glow of the pendant lights above, and our animated conversation frozen in time. Yet, there was an unsettling undertone to the image, an intrusion into our privacy that left a chill crawling down my spine. The accompanying text was short but carried a weight that echoed through the dimly lit cafe. "Someone's watching," it read, the words etched in a font that seemed to drip with malice. The casual atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a tense silence as we exchanged uneasy glances. The once inviting surroundings now felt like a stage. Paranoia crept in, insidiously coiling around our thoughts. We began scanning the room, eyes darting from one face to another, searching for any sign of recognition. The laughter of other patrons and the clinking of coffee cups became a dissonant backdrop to our rising anxiety. Were we being watched right at that moment? Was the person responsible for the message among us, concealed behind a facade of normalcy? The unsettling feeling grew as we delved into a spiral of suspicion. Every glance from a stranger felt like an accusation, every hushed conversation a potential conspiracy. Unable to shake off the ominous weight of the message, we decided to leave. The air outside felt crisp, a welcome contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. Yet, the unease lingered, following us like a shadow. We walked briskly, exchanging furtive glances, half expecting someone to jump out from the shadows. The bustling city streets offered little solace, the neon signs and distant hum of traffic. The journey home was punctuated by uneasy silences and hushed conversations about the possible origins of the cryptic message. Was it a prank, a misguided attempt at humor, or something more sinister? The unknown cast a long, foreboding shadow over what was supposed to be a night of shared laughter and connection. Arriving home did little to alleviate the lingering sense of vulnerability. The familiarity of my surroundings now seemed like a thin veneer, easily penetrated by unseen eyes. Locking doors and drawing curtains felt like feeble attempts to ward off an unknown threat, one that had already breached our personal space. As the night wore on, sleep became an elusive companion. The glow of the phone, now placed on the bedside table, taunted us with its silent presence. Was the sender still watching, anticipating our every move? The slightest creak of a floorboard or rustle of leaves outside the window became amplified in the stillness, each sound a potential harbinger of an impending threat. Morning brought little relief. If anything, it intensified the weight of the unknown. The sunlight streaming through the curtains did little to dispel the shadows of doubt that lingered in the corners of our minds. With daylight, the rational mind attempted to reassert control, dismissing the fear as unfounded paranoia. Yet, the photo and the message persisted, undeniable evidence of an intrusion that defied logic. In the aftermath, the once promising connection forged on that fateful first date dwindled. The specter of the cryptic message had woven itself into the fabric of our budding romance, unraveling the threads of trust and intimacy. The cafe, once a symbol of potential, now stood as a haunting reminder of an innocence lost. The cryptic message, like a ghostly whisper, lingered in the background, a constant reminder that the boundary between the real and the imagined is often thinner than we dare to acknowledge. The once charming first date had morphed into a cautionary tale, a narrative of vulnerability in a world where even the most intimate moments can be invaded by the unknown. The quaint city gallery beckoned with promises of art that blurred the lines between reality and the surreal. Intrigued by the mysterious allure, my date and I ventured into the dimly lit space, our footsteps echoing off the polished floors. The air hummed with an otherworldly tension, and we exchanged excited glances, eager to explore the creations that awaited us. The first room greeted us with a canvas that seemed to breathe. An ethereal mist surrounded a spectral figure, its eyes following our every move. Unsettled, we moved deeper into the exhibit, captivated by the haunting beauty that adorned the walls. Paintings depicted scenes of agony, faces twisted in surreal expressions. As we strolled through the dimly lit corridors, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with anticipation. The gallery, once a sanctuary of artistic expression, transformed into an eerie realm that defied explanation. The soft hum of distant whispers filled our ears, and shadows danced across the canvases as if the paintings themselves harbored a sinister secret. One particular painting drew us in like a moth to a flame. A masterpiece that defied conventional understanding, it portrayed a cityscape with buildings contorted into grotesque shapes. The sky above dripped with hues of blood red and midnight black, creating an unsettling contrast. As we stood before it, the distant sounds of sirens and echoing footsteps became discernible, as if the painting bridged the gap between the real world and the surreal nightmare it depicted. A sudden chill gripped the room, and we exchanged nervous glances. The ambient lighting flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to detach from the walls and move with a mind of their own. The temperature plummeted, and an inexplicable sense of dread settled upon us. Though we tried to shake off the unease, the gallery itself seemed to conspire against our attempts at normalcy. In the next room, sculptures took on a life of their own. Silent and stoic, they exuded an unsettling energy. Eyes carved from obsidian seemed to follow our movements, and the sculpture's cold gazes bore into our souls. One figure, in particular, stood at the center, its contorted form and twisted limbs creating an unsettling sense of anguish. As we circled the room, the sculptures seemed to whisper secrets known only to them, sending shivers down our spines. The ambience of the gallery intensified as we approached a seemingly infinite corridor adorned with mirrors. Reflections stretched into eternity, distorting reality with each step. The air shimmered with an otherworldly energy, and our reflections seemed to move independently, mocking us with unnatural grins. Disoriented and unnerved, we quickened our pace, desperate to escape the labyrinth of distorted reflections. A sudden hush fell over the gallery as we entered the final room. The centerpiece was a colossal installation that defied description. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting to a series of suspended metal frames. Within each frame hung a painting that seemed to shift and morph, telling a story of torment and despair. The air crackled with an ominous energy, and a distant chanting echoed through the chamber. In the dim light, the paintings came alive. Figures within them moved with agonizing slowness, their distorted limbs contorting in a grotesque dance. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, pulsating with a malevolent heartbeat. As we stood entranced by the grotesque spectacle, a chilling voice whispered ancient incantations, filling the room with an arcane power. The realization struck us simultaneously. The boundary between art and reality had disintegrated. The lines separating observer and observer blurred into an indistinguishable haze. Panic set in as we attempted to flee the room. The chanting grew louder, and the paintings thrashed violently within their frames, projecting grotesque scenes onto the walls. With a final burst of adrenaline, we burst through the gallery doors and into the cool night air. The cityscape greeted us with a stark contrast to the surreal nightmare we had left behind. Gasping for breath, we looked back at the unassuming building that housed the aberrant art exhibit, a place where the line between reality and nightmare had been blurred. As we walked away, the distant sounds of sirens and echoing footsteps lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the surreal journey we had just experienced. The gallery, once a haven for artistic expression, now stood as a testament to the thin veil between the tangible and the ethereal. The aberrant art exhibit had transcended the boundaries of conventional perception, leaving us forever haunted by the chilling realization that some nightmares are not confined to the realm of dreams.